What's going on, Omnibuddies? Mitch here, and today we have a great interview lined up for you. It's with Ben Bender, author of Bjorn. It is an amazing book, Bjorn, the Littlest Viking Saga. It's awesome. It was on Kickstarter, found it right after the Kickstarter ended, and then his second Kickstarter came up and I backed that, and a ton of people backed that, as you'll hear about in the interview. Really cool stuff, great story. Ben is an amazing guy. He's super active on all the social media. So if you are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, make sure to follow him there. I have his website and all those links down in the description of this video. So before you watch the interview, make sure to go and follow him so that you can stay up to date. All right, let's get into it. All right, we're here with Ben Bender. You are the artist and author of Bjorn. And why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, Ben? So how'd you get started?
Let's see.
Just jump into the deep end.
You what?
Just jump into the deep end. Answer the big questions.
Yeah. It's a big open-ended one. All right. So I drew when I was a kid, so I never liked to make it sound like I didn't draw until recently, because I did draw when I was a kid, but I think no more than like other people drew when they were a kid. But then I didn't draw, for a long, long time. And then I started drawing about 10 years ago, about when I turned 30. We went to a Comic-Con here in Austin, and just walking around seeing the people, it's both that element of like, oh, I remember doing that, but also seeing new stuff. So it was familiar, but it was also like really exciting and like reinvigorating. And I met a guy there that he'd kind of been in the same boat, and he said, man, I didn't draw for like the last 20 years of my life. And he said, but as soon as I started drawing again, I just realized I was just happier drawing. So he said, even if you don't do anything with it, just do it because you like drawing. So it was this real simple kind of thing. And then I kind of found some comics that were more cartoony kind of stuff. Like Chew was a really big one that when I saw it, it just that it's not like the comics I grew up with, like in the 90s. And you go, you can draw silly stuff like that and make an awesome book. Because that's what I was more drawn to, was like, kind of comic strippy sort of things. I was never going to be like a superhero kind of artist, And so I started doing like comic strips type stuff for myself, and I was doing pinups and like fan art and selling those prints at Comic-Con and doing pretty well with that. But I always wanted to do my own thing, and so one of those things that I'd been working on was this comic strip that was Bjorn. So. Cool. So you're I remember reading or hearing you talk about it. Like Bjorn started as a comic strip, like very much like all the what we grew up with in the funny sections on Sunday newspapers. I remember, reading Calvin and Hobbes and Hagar the Horrible and Garfield and all that. You were saying that it started like that before it kind of evolved into a full-on book. Yeah, it was. So when I started drawing, and especially because the majority of what I was doing was like I was just having fun and doing fan art and selling prints at shows. So you start going through all these things and you go, oh, well, what else did I love, right? Ton of pop culture, Goonies and Dark Crystal and all that sort of stuff came up. And the more I kind of mined that material of what I really liked, the more I started realizing it wasn't really comic book things, that it was cartoons, and it was especially like anything that was actual comic stuff was from the newspaper strips. That's more what I grew up with, and so that was kind of at the core of it, Mm-hmm. So that was sort of that compelled me to look more at those things and figure out, well, what was it that I really liked then? And then as I came back to them as an adult, realizing like kind of where the genius was in those, that I felt not a higher art, but there was something more difficult about it that kind of made me want to tell stories that way. But then as I was working with Bjorn, it like everything that was happening in the strips it was more about the sort of relationships and the moments, and these kind of poignant moments, and the relationships and stuff that was going on. But behind all that, my mind was writing this story of like, oh well, what brought them to that moment. And his world just kind of kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so folk tales and, things that I know about the myths kind of started coming in. And I was like, and it was very much one of those things that people talk about where the story was just kind of revealing itself. And I felt like I was hanging out with these people and I'm going, y'all's story's really big. And so, I started looking at doing multiple strips that would tell a story across, however many strips, right? And even that got to be just too much. So I started looking at some of the other comics that I'd come back to, like Crazy Cat and Little Nemo in Slumberland, where there were these giant one-page comics that you could try to do something really awesome. The Calvin and Hobbes like Sundays are another fantastic example of just what you can do visually and how much you can tell a story like on one page. I started looking at that. And even that, after a certain point, I was like, well, this has to be in a graphic format. It's just too big. So, because it's a big, I call it the saga for a reason, because it's big.
That's cool to hear. I mean, like looking at the book, I have the book here, which beautiful presentation, by the way. Just all how you designed everything. I love it. By the way, I'm a sucker for end sheets.
Oh my God.
So
me too.
This is awesome.
That is, so that book. Let's sidetrack here. That book. When I did that first Kickstarter, it was going to be just a floppy comic because I knew I was probably going to self-publish. The chances of getting picked up, especially like I have no name behind me. I mean, I had like 400 followers on Twitter at the time, and I wasn't going to get picked up. That was just, there was part of me that knows. It's funny because I knew both things. I know that someday Bjorn is going to be a big deal. Like I just know that, but I also know it's not right now. Like I know it's not. And so I wanted to test the waters of, not yet, but I wanted to test the waters of Kickstarter. And I mean, that first day, I just didn't want to look. I was like sick to my stomach. I can't believe I hit post, like it's live. And a friend of mine was like, hey man, you checked your Kickstarter? And I was like, nah, I don't think I'll look today. I might look tomorrow. And he goes, well, you need to go look. And I went and looked, and of course, it had blown by its goal. So I didn't even write anything right away. And my wife and I, we were out for our walk, and I just like lost. Like, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. And so she's the one that said, well, just make your hardcovers. So I'd always known that like it was go floppy singles, collect that into trade. Someday I'm going to do these really beautiful hardcovers. And I knew everything that I wanted to go into these hardcovers. And that's it right there. I mean, that first chapter probably wouldn't have been a standalone chapter. It wouldn't have been its own book. And I have plans for that. But that book is the exact design I've always had in my head of like, that's what it's going to be. It's crazy that's the first book,
Yeah, no, I when I saw it on Kickstarter, I was like, dang, this is a guy that knows presentation. But yeah, and I'm a sucker for the foil emboss. It's so cool.
So beautiful. But it's got to be subtle, it's got to be subtle.
Yeah, it can't be the whole thing. It's just got to be like a little element kind of a thing.
Yeah, that makes you go, oh, there's spot gloss on there too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. I totally forgot that there's right there spot gloss.
Subtle, man.
But what I wanted to, because you were talking about how like each page, like on the Sunday papers, and that is like a moment, like you're capturing a moment in Bjorn's life and some poignant thought or experience that is happening, and that's kind of what almost every one of these pages is like you see that like epic moment, that poignant moment, like we were saying, and or most pages have some sort of like a punchline or a little bit of a reveal, and so it's very much like reading, and that's why I have that nostalgia when I read this, like because I grew up on Calvin and Hobbes was my
oh yeah, man,
growing up. And now my 7-year-old daughter is, she takes my wife's and my those big collected floppy editions of Calvin and Hobbes. and she takes those to bed every night. And we have like 7 or 8 of those, and they're just, they're mangled from when we were kids and growing up.
They should be.
Taking them.
They should be.
Yeah, those kind of books need to be mangled and read and loved. But that's kind of how I grew up. And exactly. I'm very tempted to get like that big 3 hardcover slipcase of it with it.
They're nice.
Looks awesome. Yeah. So then I can just have it like there. But that's kind of how reading Bjorn was like very much your style has very much that aesthetic too. Is like it's got a lot of Calvin and Hobbes feel to it. It's got definitely your twist on it. But it gives you that nostalgic, like, okay, I'm reading like a Sunday paper, like these old comics I read when I was a kid. But it's a long form story. And those were always my favorite as a kid, when I get to read those longer versions of Calvin and Hobbes or Garfield, and they do like the longer spreads. And this is kind of what it is, where it just, it keeps going and the story's just unfolding, but it also has all these great moments in it. So
yeah, and it's funny because I don't know why comics don't feel like they do that as much. Like whenever I pick up like kind of a more mainstream sort of thing, it's like it doesn't do that. And I was surprised to find myself doing it. And I really do think it came from the comic strip kind of influence, because like it's the same thing whenever I read Bone, especially in the beginning. And really throughout the whole thing, I feel like Jeff Smith really did that on his pages too. And he was also like, it was going to be a comic strip initially. And so I wonder if that's something in there. Whereas whenever you're writing a comic book, that you deliver by the end of the book. The book is the moment, or the floppy is the moment. Yeah. So I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah, that's very true. Like each issue is here's your miniature arc. There's a poignant moment somewhere within, usually at the end. And that's why like you gotta pick it up, read a few issues, and that's why I like collected editions. It's like, okay, I can get through a few of those a night. Whereas like with yours, it's like, each page is kind of fulfilling that need, and so it's a different read in that way. So that's really cool.
Also,
did you say Bone was meant? Did you say Bone was meant to be a comic strip?
Yeah. So he, I don't remember how much he shopped it around, but so he started it when he was in college. It was called Thorn. It ran in the college newspaper, and it was the same. He kind of had the same story back then. I don't know how much of that he was putting in those old strips. They're out there, you can find them, but I just haven't hunted them down or anything. But it was initially going to be a comic strip that I believe he tried to get syndicated, and then it never really got picked up. And then it was kind of the same thing. He had this big story to tell, and people were doing like pretty big things at the time for self-published comics. So he took it that route.
I did not realize that. I'm about halfway through reading Bone. It's one of the I'm savoring it, and I like, okay, I got to stop for a little bit, come back and read some more. But it's like I'm doing the same thing with Usagi Yojimbo, where I'm like reading one of the deluxes, and I'm like, I really want to move on to the next, but I also want to force myself to savor it too.
I'll throw myself under the bus here. I haven't finished Usagi. I just can't. And Bone, I can't even count the number of times I picked up the collection, out from Boonville, the first kind of trade or the hardcover. I couldn't tell you how many times I've read that, because I take it anytime I travel. I take some Calvin and Hobbes book, and I take that Bone book. But I've only read, I shouldn't say this, I've only read the entire story one time. And and it took me, I finished it within the last like 4 years or so. And I'd been reading it for a long time. Like I started reading it whenever it, like, maybe not first came out, but whenever it had come out earlier, and I picked it up whenever I was younger even. And and I just finished it more recently, and it's my own thing. My wife hates it because I can't finish TV shows. I don't want it to be over. because there's so many possibilities, right? And you're still left with all those like, oh man, I wonder what's going to happen. And then the moment it's done, you're like, oh, okay, well now I know what happens. And so I would say, oh man, you got to finish it because it's so good. But on the other hand, savor it.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, I'm definitely savoring Bone and Usagi and working my way through.
So good, man.
Yeah. Which is why, like, when I'm reading a whole bunch of, I think I'm reading like 15 different books at one time right now. I just jump around so much. I'm like, oh, there's a great story. Now I got to go read this, and I'm jumping back and forth. So with you wanting to like savor a story, does that affect how you're how you feel with Bjorn? Like, because obviously you kind of have an idea maybe of where Bjorn's gonna, the full arc. You might not have all the details in there. I assume you have some.
It's fairly written. Like
oh wow, okay.
Like I know what happens. There are parts, right, that like I'll say the entire outline is done. Like I know what happens. I know the ending. I know everything that happens along the way. There are, of course, parts where, it might say something like Bjorn and this character have, they get in trouble. And I don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. I know what characters are involved. I know what the, whatever the antagonist of that is. I know, but all the main things, like, it's all written. Like, it's ready to go, yeah.
Are you gonna... So can I ask any idea how long it is? So this is one issue, basically, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
it's kind of the first chapter happened as its own introduction into the saga. It ends on a cliffhanger because it rolls into the next thing. So each of the story arcs is 8 issues. There are 4 story arcs that comprise the main saga, with 2 interspersed in there that are, to me, they're just as necessary because it's a lot of what builds the relationships, which is, of course, what makes you feel more connected to what happens. And in both of those, there are seeds of the main 4 story arcs that, if I need to, like if it doesn't go well, my plan is going to do those 4 story arcs. But my goal is to do all 6. So I'm looking at the next, it's the next 6 years of my creative life, basically.
Yeah. So are you kind of sad to have, like, are you kind of nervous going into, because you're like, we were talking about saving your reading experience. Are you kind of dreading that moment when it's all done? Are you excited to maybe come up with something else for Bjorn, or all right, let's close the book on Bjorn and move on to the next?
So it's all it'll all depend on what happens by then, right? Of course. So the way that I feel now, like it's my baby. And so like I have lots of other things that I really want to get to. And my goal is to be able to do one of the 4 issue arcs, the half, each one is kind of split into like 4 issues, and then the 8 comprise the story. But to do a 4 issue run each year and have time to do a smaller kind of graphic novel each year. So like something 48 pages, 64 pages, something like that. That is all, of course, dependent on like how my productivity can pick up, or if I ever want to hire a colorist or anything like that. Like right now, I just started staying home full time with my kid and drawing full time, and so it's everything is a nightmare and slow. everything takes forever, But,
so
I would,
can you tell me a little bit?
I was just gonna say, so if everything goes the way that I think it will, my goal then is, after Bjorn's all done, there's all these other stories with this kid that while I was writing it, I was like, that doesn't really fit in with any of this, but it's something awesome that happens to him. And I would like to do some of those kind of one-shot things, or bring them out as a daily strip, as an actual comic strip. So
very cool.
One of the things I thought about doing. So if I keep doing it, it'd probably be one of those things where even when it was done, I couldn't help but pumping out some, short graphic novel every year. Be like, oh, here's some other thing that happened with Bjorn, and people can figure out like when it happened in the saga. Like, oh, oh, well, he mentioned this, so it must have happened after that, and whatever.
That's cool. That's really cool. So you mentioned going full time. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition? Like, because you were a trainer, martial arts trainer full time. Is that what it was?
Yeah. So I'd been teaching. I worked with my martial arts teacher, and I kind of managed the school, and then I was kind of the head instructor for a couple of the different programs, and just it was one of those times where he and his wife, who owned the school, like they were looking to kind of make transitions or make changes for themselves. And my wife and I had already been talking about all this stuff. So it was almost like the pandemic brought the universe kind of flow together on this thing. And it was funny because whenever he and I had our meeting, and he was like, man, he's like my dad. He's kind of raised me. And he was like, man, this is not a good conversation. I'm not looking forward to this, because in his mind, he's like, look, man, I'm about to take your livelihood. And I was like, well, hang on a sec here. I don't want to teach as much. So let's start with that. And he just stared at me like, what? And so we were both on the same page as far as like kind of where we were at. So it probably would have been so difficult to ever step away from, because teaching is such a big part of, who I am. But it was one of those weird convergences of the universe, and so my wife, she's gone back to work, and she's continuing her education, but she has some other creative things that she wants to do. It's funny because we're never going to make any money, because we both really just want to be artists. Our starving. Yeah, well, our poor kid, but so it's been really nice, man. Trying to wake up earlier so that I can get more done. Also trying to make sure that I'm good and rested so that I'm at my best for the kid. But we really we call her the gremlin, but she couldn't be further from that. She is an angel. Like, we want to have another kid, and we're so scared because this one has been like perfect. The next one is just going to be a nightmare, man. It's not going to be good. so it's been pretty great, but it slowed things down for sure. It's just what it is. And I knew it going into it. I'm finding a groove, and it's actually been really nice. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because mentally or like kind of behaviorally I'm finding a groove, and I'm not as worried about like, okay, am I getting enough done by this and that? But the pages that I'm working on right now even are like, I just feel like I've leveled up somewhere along the way. And, it of course adds an extra level of like, dang it, because you're getting this awesome work done, and you wish you could go faster. So, but anyway, so it's been good. It's been, I don't know. I can't imagine not doing it that way now. So, I used to hole up in my studio while my wife and kid were out there, and so it's almost harder, right? That you're working from home, but you may as well be a million miles away, because you go out there to eat lunch, and that's it, and then you're done. And then at the time, I was still working at the school, so I'd get done, and I'd be teaching, and we were teaching remotely during the pandemic, the first part of it there, and that'd be right about the time that my kid was waking up from her nap, and I'm working. So it's like I worked all day, and then I'm working when she wakes up. So anyway, this has been fantastic. So it's been pretty amazing. So
that's cool. That's really cool. It's allowed you to kind of be more a part of your family and
yeah.
Things,
and it's really because of my wife, right? Like, I'm not making any more money. Like, I'm not making enough money to support me, right? So I was the one that was working before, and so now she's the one working now, and so it's funny whenever you're like, well, I'm a full-time cartoonist. That's why usually whenever I post it, I'm like, well, I'm a full-time daddy and cartoonist, because if I say I'm a full-time cartoonist, that implies this like, oh, dude, you're making a living being a cartoonist. And it's like, no, that's cute, that's adorable. No, not yet. Not yet.
Soon. I mean, you got some side stuff going on with Bjorn. You got I mean, you're on all the social networks. I was going to hit this at the end, but segues into this. But I mean, you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You're going to cons and selling commissions and things like that. But you also have a Patreon too that you started.
I do, man. I tell you, yeah, I can't say enough about that. So I started it years ago, and I always would just kind of put it on pause because I wasn't really doing anything with it. And yeah, man, it is the craziest thing to have even a small number of people, even the people that are like, oh yeah, I'll pay $2 a month, and I could give them the biggest hug in the world, and I'm sure they'd be like, come on, man, it's $2, but it's the idea behind that, and I see some of these people that they make their living off of Patreon, and I hope that everybody, no matter whether it's paying your bills or not, like the craziness that someone would, like the verification that someone believes in what you're trying to do enough to go, I'll kick that dude a couple bucks. It's wild, man. It really is wild. Every time I'm on there, it's really tough because I want my Patreon to be about Bjorn. So I want it to be like, hey, these are the people who really just want you to do the thing that you were going to do anyway. And so I do like quarterly mail outs, and I send stuff out. Not all the time, because if I start focusing on that, then I'm making sure that I drew some new picture instead of drawing, a couple of Bjorn pages that day. And ultimately, I want the people who are on the Patreon to be people that are like, I want this dude to keep making his book. Don't worry about sending me a print. That's nice. I want you to make the next book. So, and for the most part, that's the vibe from those folks. It's wild, man. It is wild. I feel the same way about that I do like with the Kickstarter itself. Like both Kickstarters have just, a buddy of mine asked me during the second one, and the second one was just blowing up. So can you relax now? And I was like, I don't know if I ever will, man. Because it's that thing that I was talking about before, where I know that someday it will be a big deal, but I don't feel like it is right now. And yet, on a certain level, to me, I feel like, but I'm making big deal, moves. Like people are going, here, man, do this thing. Let's go. Giving me money and helping make this project happen. And the Patreoners, people going, here, man, like be an artist. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So anyway, yes. So I have a Patreon, and it's the most bizarre thing in the world to me right now. Yeah.
So you mentioned the Kickstarters. So the first one obviously went pretty well, because book one got made, and you said it got funded in the first day. I think I came in right. I think I discovered Bjorn right after the Kickstarter ended, the first one. And I think I bought it from your store, is what I remember.
Yeah, I think so. There was a wave of folks. Yeah, because someone posted it on one of the Facebook pages. And I remember, it was funny, because I remember sitting, it was like a Friday night or Saturday night, and I was sitting with my wife, and we were watching TV, and my phone kind of dinged. And I was like, oh, cool, man, we got a sale through the shop. That's awesome. And my phone blew up again, and then again, and again, and again. And then my assistant, who lives in New York, he texted me, and he goes, hey, man, are you seeing this? And it was just like, boop, 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 boop. We were getting all these sales, and I was like, what is going on here? And I think it was through one of those Facebook groups. And again, man, some of the communities like that of just people that are like, I really love this. It's such a I don't know, motivating isn't even the right word. It's inspiring. So
yeah, that's really cool. So one went pretty Kickstarter. Your first Kickstarter went really well, and then it kind of blew up a little bit after the Kickstarter too. Like you were just saying, where all of a sudden it got shared and people started finding it and discovering it. And then can you tell me, like, Kickstarter, your second Kickstarter for book 2? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I mean, it was crazier even than the first one for me, because now that we had done the first one, it was the not course correct, but it was the kind of bringing everything together from the first one. So the next book was going to be 3 chapters to complete the 4, right? Because each of those 8-issue story arcs is kind of told in 2 sort of books. Excuse me. And so the next one was going to be 3 chapters, and each of my chapters is like 32 to 36 pages, and that just goes back to what we were talking about with. I don't know how anybody gets anything done in like a 20-page comic. Like I don't know how. I wouldn't even know how to begin. I like the slow burn and being able to take my time. And, comics is all about pacing. And so if you just feel like you got to go, I wouldn't know how to do it. So 3 of those issues, that's a big book, right? And I knew we weren't going to do all of the cover embellishments and stuff as stretch goals. It's like, well, we already made the book that I wanted to make. So now we're going to do that again. So I knew I had to ask for more money. And I mean, I'm sitting there crunching numbers and talking to my printer and figuring out how much I got to ask for. I knew without a doubt it probably wasn't going to happen. I was just like, I don't know. But you know what? I'm going to throw it out there and let's see. Because if we get close, then I know that maybe I'll just finagle a few things and we'll just launch the Kickstarter again. And then it funded in like hours. I mean...
So wait, what was the funding? What was the funding goal for the first one?
The first one was like $750 because I wanted to make some comic books, and I was like, I'll send them out to like my 50 friends, right? Like, these people who are like, yeah, I'll buy one of Ben's books, whatever. Yeah. And so that one we did just over $20,000.
Okay, and then what was the second one's goal?
The second one was, I think it was like 24,000. It was like 24,000, okay. And we made just under 60. So and again we funded in like hours. I mean, I just was like, I don't even know. And that's the thing. My friend asking me like, can you relax about this now? I'm like, I can't, because what happens is so outside of what I think is going to happen. That like, how can I relax? I can't make a prediction. I have no idea. I did so much research before doing a Kickstarter of like, okay, how should you put a campaign together? What can you expect? What kind of percentage from people that follow you? Which I have no following, right? And so, anyway, it's just been, I don't get it, man. I don't know what to, and it's funny because now I have people hitting me up that are like, hey, I'm gonna pick your brain on my next Kickstarter, and I'm like, I mean, I can tell you the stuff that I learned before I ran my campaigns, but I can't tell you how to make what happened for me happen for you, because I don't even know how to make what happened for me happen for me, Yeah. But it's so crazy, man. It's just crazy.
That's awesome. So, like with book 2, you're obviously working on it now. Yep. If you just follow you on any of the networks, we're seeing stuff coming out and all the stuff you're working on, and Train of Thought. Very good. Oh, geez. That's book 2? Ooh.
I mean, that's some of it.
Well, yeah, not all of it, but I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
Now I lost my train of thought. I'm excited.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So, yeah, book 2 finishing, sometime in the next. I don't. What's your plan for that? For finishing book 2?
I'd hoped to have been. This is where I'm delayed, and I've been talking to my printer, so I'm about to put anybody who's watching this that is in the Kickstarter. I'm putting up an official update next week, but I'd wanted to have everything done by the end of October, but it's not going to happen. So my best guess now is that I'm going to have inking finished hopefully by the end of November, but again, it all depends on just kind of my flow and how quickly I can get things done. I just actually got off the phone with someone who's going to help me do the color flatting, so that's going to take some of that off my plate. So that'll help kind of catch some things back up. I don't think there's a chance, talking to my printer, that I could still have the book finished and sent out in February, which was my goal. More likely, it's probably going to be March. So I'm not much behind where I wanted to be, but I hate being behind, period. So it's tough. Well, so February or March.
Yeah. No,
as of right now.
One Kickstarter, you always anticipate delays, especially when they blow up on you, and
Yeah.
It's compounds everything. Craziness of trying to get that many more copies printed compared to what you were, initially quoted for, and then shipping all that, and then compounded by the pandemic and all the shipping craziness and paper shortages and all that now. And
that's one of the ones that I was a little worried about. Yeah. I will say this. This is my sorry to interrupt that, but I tried to factor so much of that in. I really did. Light keeps going off there, and that's why I put such a big lead time on it. And I think the big thing that it's always what you didn't expect. We didn't plan on me going full time, or we had planned on my wife being in a different place in what she was doing, so that we both were going to be home a little more. And it's just the life stuff. And it's man, I'm not trying to knock the Kickstarter model or anything, but it drives me absolutely bonkers that it's just this. I can't imagine it. It's weird because we look at it like, oh, you're a customer, but you're not. You're an investor, right? And so, like, whenever people are making things and you're an investor and you're behind the scenes, you're privy to all the, like, oh, well, it got delayed. Oh, well, it got delayed. Oh, well, it got delayed. You don't get a release date sent out until it's actually coming. Whereas with Kickstarter, we go, well, this is our best guess. And we all know it's not true. So I tried to give a, like, no, for real. This is good. It's going to take a long time, but this is when it's going to be done. And then, so anyway, it cuts me, man. It cuts me to my core.
Well, I think, I've backed a fair amount of stuff now on Kickstarter, and it's pretty much assumed, like, okay, February-ish. Like,
right.
I can at least appreciate, like, what you're saying is, like, okay, I'm guessing with, shipping around the holidays and the pandemic going on, and I'm working by myself on most of this, and, like, you've done at least a lot of research into, time frames. So I can, like, all right, he's probably pretty close. If it comes out first, second quarter of 2022, cool.
Yeah.
I've backed books that come out. What was my first book I backed? Came out like 2 years after the initial. So that was my first entry into it. So I'm like, that's less than
everything
6
after
months.
that. Yeah. And it really, and everybody is amazing about it. Like, whenever you say, I'm so sorry, guys, like, everybody's like, oh yeah, whatever, man, take care of yourself, like,
we got enough to read anyways.
And it's great. It's your own thing that you're like, man, I really, I want it. If I could have the book done faster, and it's exciting because all of the slowdown kind of happened pretty early on, a while ago, and now I'm finding a groove again. And so it's what I was saying, where you're like, damn it, if I could have this groove going 2 months ago, I'd have the book done early, and so it's just, hey man, that's life. So the hope then is that then rolling into the next book, I can say, all right, guys, it's going to take about this much time, and then I can deliver it early, and we'll see. That's the hope.
So okay, so you're saying February, maybe March, somewhere in there. I won't make you say, like, specific, but so then is your exactly. So is your plan then for, like, book 3 is to launch, like, right after that? Take a little bit of time. I would not blame you.
So what happens is time kind of gets factored in. So with this one, once I finish this book, because I'm also doing the Togo one shot, and I'm using a separate comic book printer for that. So I get this one sent along to my book printer, and while they're doing that, I'm finishing Togo. But Togo, the way it's getting drawn and how I'm approaching it and stuff like that, it's already written, somewhat thumbnailed too. I don't really do a lot of thumbnailing. I kind of just do it on the page. And that I'll do while book 2 for Bjorn is getting printed and proofed and all that kind of stuff. And then I'll have a couple months in there even before we do the shipping, where I get to start in on the next book. So I'll have some lead time to kind of move into it. And so since this was my first book, I honestly didn't have. I had ideas from other artists and stuff that I followed about, like, what I should be doing to approach my own productivity and what works best. Like, how do you pencil the whole thing and then do you ink the whole thing? Do you work it in sections like that? And I'm starting to kind of find my way of doing it of, well, this works best. And oh my gosh, when I did it that way, I finished like 8 pages last week, like from beginning to end, done. And that's a big deal to me. Like some guys, I know they're like a page a day, but for me, it always depends. And I've started finding my kind of groove. So I think that me being able to carry like a strong productivity sort of behavior set from the end of book 2 right into book 3, I'm gonna start right in on it, and then launch the Kickstarter soon after that. And my hope is kind of like I did with this one. Now with book 2, I wasn't really factoring in any sort of financial, like I want to make money, and I don't know what will be left over, because I love sinking money into the stretch goals, man. And I mean, I always want the merch to be top quality. So anyway, we'll see how much I have left. But with the next book, because it is a full-time thing now, I'm hoping that I can also like, hey guys, here's, I'm asking for a little bit more than I did on the first one, because I'm factoring in some for income, because now I'm doing it full-time. So, and we'll see. Maybe that will be the thing that tanks the Kickstarter, and then I got to launch it again. So who knows? But I think
you want to make money writing comics.
Yeah. A little bit.
Actually just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Starving artist, not dying artist. So.
Yeah. But I think that's the. Yeah. That's been a strength of mine going into it, though, was people talking about the Kickstarter and how it did well and things like that. I think there's part of it is a willfulness, like a manifestation thing, where it's like I knew I was going to make the book regardless. So if the second Kickstarter didn't work out, I was going to go back to plan A and just start making the book on my own and do comics and sling them as I could, So I knew there would be a book in some form or fashion.
Yeah. It's come along with me, or I'm going on my own. That's good.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Basically.
So let's see. So you mentioned, was it Toga?
Togo, yeah. Togo the Destroyer.
Togo, yeah. Togo, that's right. So you have that lined up, you're doing that. Are you working on anything else then besides Bjorn in that one, or are you just concentrating on...
Well, that's like a side, that's a Bjorn thing, right? That's his favorite comic book hero, and that was one of the stretch goals for the second book.
That's right.
So I have some things that I want to do as side projects, but I know myself, like I have a very ADD kind of obsessive state mind, where rather than bouncing all over the place, I just sort of like obsess on a thing. And so if I start doing that, Bjorn, I don't get as much done. And I have something that I'm hoping to be able to roll with once I start in on book 3. Like that's actually, I'll show you. That's what I was doing today, just kind of as my mental health drawing. I have this project that I'm doing at some point. I don't know how you can see that.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's another book that will make me absolutely no money, because it is a silent black and white comic. It's
a good hook though. It's a very good hook though.
Yeah, people, look, man, I tell you what, people love color, and I don't think people like silent comics. It's not a thing. But I told people whenever I started I've posted like 4 images, and people were like, "This looks awesome. You need to do this." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna do it." And whenever I explained it to a few kind of behind the scenes people, they were like, "You just not want to make money? Like, what's wrong with you? You black and white, no one's gonna buy it first off, and then you're not gonna have any. So it's not gonna have any word anyway. So it's called Wake, and that's something that I've really been wanting to do. But the problem with Wake is it's like Bjorn, where it's actually like it's a trilogy, and they're kind of bigger stories, and so like, I got to do one of these other small things. So what I'm hoping to do if I do decide to tackle Wake into next year is I'm going to release it kind of webcomic style, and it will just be like no set schedule. Unfortunately, I know that people aren't going to like that, but I'm like, I can't commit to it. I got to commit to Bjorn. So, and then as enough material gets put together with it, then I'll do Kickstarters for the books and all that. And then my other option is I've got, you what?
We see that happen quite a bit. A lot of web comics as they get enough together. Bring them in.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I want to do is I might, if I don't think I could do something like that, because Wake is such a big story, I've narrowed down a couple of things that I've written that I'm like, I think I could do that as like just a short graphic form, just a big format graphic comic, 48 to 64 pages, something like that. And I could just kind of do that on the side, and then when it's done, run that campaign and try to do something with that, or submit it. I don't know why my brain never even goes to pitching things. I'm just like, yeah, just go make it on your own, man.
That's awesome. Let's see. So talk about that. So kind of the last two questions I have. I was curious.
Okay.
You've mentioned your wife being a creative too. Does your whole family read comics, or is it just you?
No, it's I mean, my kid does kind of. It's funny because like she has her own. I've bought her own bone books because she'll just bust up mine, and so I get her own whenever we go to like half price books and stuff. So I mean, she's 2.5, so she reads whatever you give her. My wife does. She likes comics. She's not like a collector. I mean, I'm barely a collector. But she'll find stuff like whenever you what?
I was gonna say I think I see some slabbed comics behind you, but
I have one slab. Where is it?
Okay.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah, I think that's a slab of bone.
Yeah, and that's my one slabbed comic. And honestly, I bought that comic slabbed because I had been wanting to buy a Bone #1 first printing for years, and they were expensive. And so I was like, I'll get one later. Well, as soon as, almost like with Osagi, as soon as they started talking about the animated series, it like the prices of them just. So that was the one that I could find that I was like, okay, that fits in my price range of where I had budgeted initially. And I mean, they're shooting through the roof, man. It's ridiculous. So I bought it slabbed. I'm gonna crack that slab though. Next time I know I'm gonna be around Jeff Smith, I'm gonna crack that slab so I can get it signed.
Worth it.
And then I don't know if I'll re-slab it. I don't like the slabs. Nobody be mad at me. That's my controversial thing, I guess, that I'm gonna say during this talk. I'm not a big slab fan.
I really like the hard top loaders that you can just slide it in, keeps it safe.
I really love the nice Mylar bags. I just feel like they make the comics look better than anything. Like not the normal kind of poly bag, but they make like those Mylar ones that are just real. They're crisp. They're beautiful. So anyway, that's my favorite.
All right. So your family reads. Obviously your daughter's 2.5, reads whatever you put in front of her. Yeah, it's like my 3-year-old. She'll read anything laying on the floor.
Yep.
But wife reads too. That's awesome. So, so last question I have for you is, what are you reading?
Let's see. Well, right now, comic-wise, I moved some of them over here to stack my iPad on. So I've got the Jonna trade over here. And then there's this Kickstarter that I backed a while ago. This I don't know how to say it. It's Marth Vallis. And then the other one, hopefully I don't move this. I picked up the Wind hardcover, WYND from Tinian. And then I'll show you here in a second. I don't want to disturb this. But book-wise, I started reading. It's in the other room. I bounce between books, like actual books. I was given Deep Work, another read. That's always a good one for productivity, for me at least. And then what else was in there? Got a Qigong book on meditation and stuff.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
But I haven't had a lot of time for reading. So it's back to like recycle the same stuff. So like on my nightstand, from what I can remember, is Jake Parker's Drawings 5, because I was looking at landscape comics. Jeff Smith's first Tukey book just came in, so I got that in there. What was the other landscape book? Oh, Troy Little's Angora Napkin, because he did that one landscape. So I was kind of going back through some landscape books. And then I was actually rereading the Bone Tall Tales.
Okay.
So it's got Big Johnson Bone in it, but Stan Sakai actually did a couple of the chapters of it. So most of it was Jeff Smith, but then Stan Sakai did a couple. So I like doing that, so I can see his black and white stuff. And I think that's it. That's on my shelf or my nightstand right now. So Asterix. I got some
awesome.
Asterix in there. I remember looking at that.
That's awesome. Well, unless I forgot anything, that's all my questions.
Okay.
It was awesome. It was awesome talking with you. Thank you for taking like a full hour just to chat with me and tell me about your creative process and Bjorn and all that.
Thanks for
very
thanks
excited
for having me.
Yeah, very excited to get book 2. Book 1 was awesome. Stoked to back book 3 day 1. Obviously.
Thank you. That's going to be good, man.
As I assume most of us are very excited for book 3 as we are book 2. So
what I've been telling folks is so book 1 is nice, it was short, it was fun. If you liked it, you kind of get a vibe of the fun of it. And then in book 2, you meet you meet a smaller group of people. So it's about him meeting Goob. It's about him meeting his best friend. And what happens with them in their first meeting. And then the third book, he meets the main village where he ends up settling. He meets the people from that village on the island. And I kind of tell folks that, like, well, if you like book 1 and 2, you're probably going to dig it. And if you can stick with me after book 3, you're going to love it. One of the things, I had a really amazing review written, and it was great. I mean, everything about it I absolutely loved. Even the things that she said, like, well, I wish it would have had more of this, and I wish it would have had more of that. And one of the things, every one of them that it said, I was like, oh, just wait, because it was like, well, this was fun, but if you're looking for something a little deeper, you might want somewhere else. And I was just kind of like, oh, just wait, man, because I shouldn't say it this way because it's horrible, but I'm gonna tear y'all's heart out by the end, And that's not necessarily true, but you'll go, wait a minute, what happened to that cute little kid that was going to eat that bird? Like, I thought this was all just going to be jokes, So after book 3, we'll tug a little bit on the heartstrings. So
that's awesome. It's good to know that there's it. I love what it is now, but it's good to know that it evolves and grows more.
And it's always what it is now, and that's what's I think that's what's fun about it, is it's always the fun, it's always that kid, but you see that kid in these other situations.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for again taking the time to talk with me. Good luck, and again, you can you're on what all networks are you on?
As of now, because I'm one of those thinking about jumping ship on social media people, I've got a website, I just got to plug it. So, go sign up for my newsletter on my website, thelittlestviking.com. But I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I've got an Instagram, and Patreon.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with me, and take care. Good luck being a stay-at-home dad / artist.
Thanks. Yeah, man.
So that was the interview with Ben Bender of Bjorn. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some cool insights into his process and into his story. Really cool guy. I just want to say thank you, Ben, for taking a full hour out of your day after finally getting your kid to sleep, and my kids to sleep we're all tired, but it was awesome talking with you. Again, if you have not followed Ben, make sure to do that. He's on Twitter, Instagram, What was the other one? Facebook. Make sure to do that. Hit up his website if you're interested in picking up the book. Get ready for Kickstarter number 3 when he finally gets to fulfill volume 2. So excited about that. But again, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, do all those things. You know, that's great. But make sure to comment. Love talking with you all about what you're reading, what you're backing on Kickstarter. What did you think of the interview? Do you have any other questions for Ben that I can pass along and maybe find out some more information? Let me know in the comments. All right, that's it for now. Take care. Stay safe.